Mr. Cicilline said earlier today, because it is clear to me that the more my colleagues misinterpret the Second Amendment and the Supreme Court's decision in D.C. versus Heller, the more they are giving up the fact that they've not actually read those documents. Let's start with the Second Amendment. The text is clear. The amendment protects the collective right of the people as a whole to possess arms solely for the purpose of forming a well-regulated militia. Now, last time I checked, the National Guard doesn't depend on teenage boys owning semi-automatic rifles with high-capacity magazines. Notice that while the Second Amendment is explicit that the government has the authority to regulate the use of arms, the Second Amendment does not include a single word, not one word, about an individual right to own a gun. In fact, the claim that the Second Amendment protects an individual's right to own a gun is so indefensible that even the conservative former Chief Justice Warren Burger, a Nixon appointee, no less, had once denounced it as, quote, one of the greatest pieces of fraud on the American public he had ever heard. No wonder the Supreme Court never recognized an individual right to own a gun from the ratification of the Constitution in 1789. Until 2008, when the Roberts Court's far-right majority issued its 5-4 opinion in Heller. So let's talk about Heller. Yes, Heller did set a constitutional baseline that there is a right to own a handgun for self-defense in the home. But even in that egregiously mistaken decision, even in that decision, the court made clear that we can still regulate gun ownership and possession, particularly in sensitive places, as well as prohibit an individual from possessing firearms. As the late Justice Scalia's opinion explains, quote, like most rights, the right secured by the Second Amendment is not unlimited. And, quote, the right was not a right to keep and carry any weapon whatsoever, in any manner whatsoever, and for whatever purpose. In fact, Justice Scalia went out of his way to emphasize that the sort of measures we are considering today would be plainly constitutional. He wrote, quote, nothing in our opinion, nothing should be taken to cast doubt on laws forbidding the carrying of firearms in sensitive places, such as schools and government buildings, or laws imposing conditions and qualifications on the commercial sale of arms. And he continued that, quote, another important limitation on the right to keep and carry arms is that only, quote, the sorts of weapons protected were those in common use at the time. The Constitution does not condemn us to allow weapons of war to flood our neighborhoods. Make no mistake about that. My colleague's desperate citation to an outlier ruling by 2 Trump appointees in one circuit, and when have they ever been fans of the Ninth Circuit, as my colleague Mr. Neguse pointed out earlier, does not change the reality of what the Supreme Court has said. That is why even more circuits have upheld age restrictions on firearm purchases. The Fifth Circuit has twice upheld restrictions on particular weapons for 18 to 21-year-olds. The Supreme Court declined to weigh in both of those times, allowing the Fifth Circuit to be the final word in upholding these age restrictions. And the First and Seventh Circuits have upheld age restrictions as well. Activist, Trump-appointed judges may be trying to change settled law, just as they are trying to roll back decades of settled law upholding the right to an abortion. But don't believe the lie that they are selling, a lie so radical that even the far-right Roberts Court hasn't endorsed it. Age restrictions are nothing new, and they are consistent with the Second Amendment. So I've heard enough, and I think I speak for my Democratic colleagues when I say this, of ill-informed, bad faith constitutional misinterpretations. The Constitution is no obstacle to protecting our kids in America today. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.